heavenly voice telling him, "The sacrifice with those greens was more precious than the sacrifice that was made with the ox and all his other animals." Eliezer Lipa was a water carrier in Galatia. Now, water carriers didn't make much money, and it was a very hard job. But he actually did pretty well because he sold water to the 4 wealthiest merchants in town, and they paid him double the going rate. So he was doing pretty well for himself. And he was, had his wagon, and he was carrying the water, and he saw in the town square there was a large crowd of people gathered around someone. So he stopped and he was saying, what's going on? Why is so many people gathered around? They said, "Oh, we have a wonderful itinerant storyteller, and he's just telling us wonderful stories from the Gemara." So he stopped his wagon and parked his wagon, and he went and he pushed himself to the front to hear what was going on. And it was the Baal Shem Tov, but he hadn't revealed himself yet. He was just Shrelek, an itinerant storyteller, and he was telling stories from the Gemara. And this was the story that he was telling. He was telling the story of an extremely wealthy man who was bringing a sacrifice to the Beis Hamikdash, to the Holy Temple, and he brought in a tremendously fattened ox. Everyone was marveling at the mass of this animal, what a tremendous sacrifice it was. And he brought other animals as well. He had sheep as well. And on the way to the Holy Temple, to the Beis Hamikdash, the ox stopped, would not take another step. And everybody was poking and prodding and pulling, and it made a big scene, and people were trying to get the ox to move. But no matter what they did, they could not get the ox to budge. He would not move. Well, there was a poor man, very thin, underfed, who had just picked greens for his family and had a handful of greens. And he was going back and he saw what was going on. So he walked up to the ox and he fed him a little bit of greens through the muzzle, and he pulled back and the ox pulled forward. And he kept on feeding the ox and stepping back, and the ox would follow him to get more greens. And he was able to coax the ox to go all the way to the Beis Hamikdash to be sacrificed. And he got him there, but he didn't have any more greens. And he had to go home to his family empty-handed, and they had to spend another night hungry. Now, the wealthy man, on the other hand, sacrificed this tremendous ox, plus many sheep, and there was a huge feast from the sacrifices for his friends and family, and sacrifices were given to the Kohanim, whereas the poor man had to go to bed hungry. That night, as he slept, a wealthy man heard a heavenly voice telling him, "The sacrifice with those greens was more precious than the sacrifice that was made with the ox and all his other animals." And the Baal Shem Tov then told the people how precious it is when you serve God with simple joy and when you do a sacrifice with all your heart. Well, when Eliezer Lipa heard this, he was so inspired. He says, "Wow, I would like to do a sacrifice for God, similar to what this poor man did." So he got back on his wagon and he's riding. He's like, how can I do this? I'm just a simple water carrier. What can I do with water? He had an idea. The synagogues need water for people to wash their hands. And there's another water carrier who sells water to the 4 synagogues, and they pay him half as much. He says, what if I traded with him? He could deliver to the wealthy people, the 4 wealthy people, and I would deliver to the 4 synagogues. I would lose a lot of money, but I would gain by serving Hashem, by bringing the water for people to wash their hands. So he went to his wife and he told her about the tremendous story he heard from the Talmud and how he would like to deliver water to the synagogues for people to wash their hands in order to pray, rather than delivering it to the wealthy people. And she readily agreed. So he went to the other water carrier and said, "Hey, would you like to have my route of the 4 wealthy merchants if you would let me bring it to the synagogue?" And he says, "Yes, I would love to do that. I could really use the money." So they made the exchange, and they didn't tell anyone why. And when he would gather water, For the synagogue, his wife would go with him. They would go to the river. They would collect water together, and they would think how this water would be used as a mitzvah for people to wash their hands before prayer. So they did this with pure, simple faith, and they didn't tell anyone about it. Well, they couldn't have children, but in the merit of doing this mitzvah, they were blessed with those 2 children, and those 2 children were Elimelech of Lizhensk and Reb Zusha of Anipoli, 2 of the greatest Chassidim of the Maggid of Mezritch, who was the follower of the Baal Shem Tov and took leadership after him. So what do we learn from this? We learned from this that no matter what our station is in life, no matter what situation is in, no matter what opportunities we have available to us, we can always serve God with simple faith. Whenever we do a mitzvah or we make a sacrifice to God, if we're doing it with a pure heart, to our best of ability, it makes a tremendous impact and is incredibly appreciated by God.